Good day, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of Heroes and Icons, a program that looks at some of heroes and icons of the 20th, 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries. But these are personal choices of my own, obviously, and some suggestions as well that have come in, and we're absolutely grateful for that. And we have an email for the program. It's info@lairmedia.tv for all your comments and suggestions for any characters or people that you might think are forgotten in history and maybe might worth to mention. All we can do with these programs is give you a thumbnail of the career of those people and the lives they led. And today's program is no different than all the other ones we did. And thank you as well for the commentary and the support as well for this. This is brought to you on their media in conjunction with Blue Sky Broadcasting and Media Services Limited. And the subject of today's History and Icons slot is the actor, singer, dancer, musician. I suppose he became very famous in the small screen TV series, but nevertheless, he forged a very good career for himself. And of course, I speak of Gene Barry. Now, Gene Barry, he was born Eugene Class in 1919 in New York City. And both his parents were entertainers. His dad was a very, very famous and very well-known violin player. And his mother was a very successful amateur actor. And so there was a lot of music, a lot of positivity, artistically speaking, which awakened an interest very early on in Eugene Class's career, or should I say now, he took the stage name Gene Barry from one of his idols at the time, the actor, well-known actor, John Barrymore, hence Gene Barry. And his childhood, he grew up in Brooklyn, New York, so he was very artistic and indeed was very, I suppose he brought his artistic skills from his mum and dad, but he also was a very accomplished musician. And some of that would come from his dad, who himself played the violin, and his mother, I said, who was an actor. So he was steeped in the entertainment tradition and all of that. But his initial foray into when he was in high school was to become a footballer, like many people did. But he broke his arm, a pretty bad break, playing NFL, and that, of course, had a double whammy effect on him, in that his, I suppose, idea of playing the violin, it restricted the movement, and really at that time, then he took to the stage because he's quite a good singer as well. That's Gene Barry. So he got a lot of parts in the different musicals around the place. And he did very well indeed, And he appeared in a lot of musicals, The New Moon, The Merry Widow, and Happy Larry, etc. All the normal musical merry-go-rounds that you'd be going from company to company. So he got a bit of work, and he was pretty busy as well. Of course, he was 6 foot tall. He was quite a handsome-looking man, attractive man, and he had a fantastic voice. Any of you want to look into some of the movies he made, but he was hoping to get into movies, as many people did, but he made a decent-sized living on the stage in musicals, and I suppose reviews as well, that were very popular of the era. You must remember, you're talking about the late 40s, early 50s here, and when he was in his late 20s and early 30s. Anyway, he's got a part in his first movie called The Atomic City in 1952. And this led on into a further part in the film of the following year, 1953, in The War of the Worlds. And obviously, in between films and all of that, he still did an awful lot of stage work, which he was in demand for, which was fantastic for him in his career. There was a visibility. And of course, you had an awful lot of people at that time. You're talking about scouts for the studios and people and agents and a plethora of other people going to all these, attending all these musicals and looking out and have to watch out for the next big thing or talent. And a lot of these would be casting agents and stuff that would be looking around for people to play different roles and different challenges for them. And television was beginning to emerge as well as a medium that one could, I suppose, look for a career in. Small box, the television, and a lot of series were being cast at the time. And he appeared in many supporting roles on TV at the time as well. He got a lot of supporting roles on TV. Then, I suppose, in 1958, which is the subject of this Heroes and Icons, in 1958, he was cast in the TV series Bat Masterson. Now, Bat Masterson was a Western, a different style Western, but nevertheless, if you see, as you can see there with some of the pictures we're putting up during the show, he was well dressed, but he played a character called Bat Masterson, but there was a real live Bat Masterson as well, as people may know from their history. And he was a well-known, I suppose, prospector, gambler, a man for all seasons, so to speak. He was sheriff in Dodge City, he was sheriff in Kansas, that's Bat Masterson himself, and he teamed up one time with Wyatt Earp and a few more as well. People would know from the different films that are around. Wyatt Earp was a very famous, I suppose, a gunfighter as well as being a marshal as well, and involved in many aspects of that. And he owned a saloon for a while. That's the original Bat Masterson. And there was plenty, I suppose, of old newsreel film around of him. And if you see a photograph of the original Bat Masterson with his rather good mustache on his face at the time, there was a similarity between him and Gene Barry, who played the character of Bat Masterson. Now, as I said, it was only loosely based on the original Bat Masterson, and the original Bat Masterson became Costa Ray in New York, where he eventually settled, and his columns that he penned for various newspapers around became very popular. And he turned into a rather very successful columnist as well, a successful columnist. That's where he lived out his days in New York, and he rubbed shoulders with some of the greats like the wonderful Damon Runyon, the wonderful writer and wit and raconteur, Damon Runyon, who's, I suppose, just come to mind, one of his books, novelettes became eventually the musical Guys and Dolls. That's the aforementioned Damon Runyon. But the original Bat Masterson himself passed away in 1960 at the age of 68 in New York City. But getting back to Gene Barry, that afforded him then a steady stream, steady income. Gene Barry playing Bat Masterson. That TV series, even though it lasted 4 years from 1958 to 1961, nevertheless, it did, I suppose, give him the security of living what we call a normal life. If you call acting a normal life, is always challenging for actors, because one day you're up, the next day you're down, one day you're on demand, and your face doesn't fit all these known casting agents, and suddenly you find yourself out of work. And indeed, I suppose, well, getting back to the original, the character is based on Bat Masterson, the original. He refereed, or he was timekeeper and all, and official that officiated at the famous world heavyweight boxing fight between Jess Willard and Jack Johnson, which was held in Cuba, and Bat Masterson himself officiated at that. There's no doubt that he had a sizable bet on it as well, you know. He was a gambler as well, but as many people at the time were, you know. And the Gene Barry himself then, of course, forged a very successful career, as I said, in television. And he also did a detective series called Buck's Law, playing Amos Burke, who, I suppose, driven around, which is unusual at the time. Driven around a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce was his mode of transport for Buck's Law, but it worked. It worked at the time, and that was in the 1960s as well. And pretty successful. And an awful lot of people, an awful lot of actors and actresses had parts in that, supporting parts and different things, and well-known names as well, to boost, I suppose, the ratings as well, and to enhance the attractiveness for the viewer as well, who may be looking in. And of course, Gene Barry himself, in the pilot episode of Columbo, Gene Barry was the very first murderer that Detective Columbo had to investigate. And we know how long that ran for, and we know how successful that was with Peter Falk for years and years and years. And I thought it was Beyond Forever, that is Columbo, which was a very successful TV series as well. And there was an awful lot of specials made towards the end as well. And it was quirky, it was attractive, well acted, of course, fantastic acting in those things, in those TV series, as well as in Batmasterson. Batmasterson's a bit dated now, obviously, from when I said it was around 58 to 61. It was in black and white, of course. I remember it as a child, watch it on television, in complete awe myself of it. And of course, I didn't know many of the actors and actresses that appeared in it at the time, even. But obviously, looking back on it later on, fantastic memories of and these were series and to look forward to. Unlike today, where you can pre-record things and in a whole heap of episodes and all, we had to wait. You saw the episode during the middle of the week, Batmasterson, and obviously some of the episodes were carried part 1 and part 2, so we'd be waiting for a whole week for part 2 to come out to catch up on the story. And as I said, there was no facility for recording or anything like that. I think that was the attractiveness of it, and it was an easier time to deal with things as well. Of course, there was less channels as well, television channels to look at, but we did take an awful lot in Ireland. Certainly, we did take an awful lot of these TV series to our own RTV, as they were known at the time. Some of them were absolutely excellent, like The Virginian, like Paladin, Have Gun Will Travel, and The Lone Ranger and all of that. But this Batmasterson is our focus. Gene Barry is our focus for this evening on this, So Gene lived a very successful and happy life. That's Gene Barry himself. And obviously did his parents and his craft proud. And he played an awful lot of, there was a lot of specials done in the 1980s on Batmasterson. He came back to do a couple of specials. He continued his work on the stage, singing as well, and in musicals and different reviews as well, right into the 1980s, right up to when he was 84 or 85, I think he was active. But then obviously he wasn't able to do it anymore. His wife predeceased him by 6 years, I think, 6 years, 2003, his wife passed away. And then Gene Barry himself, of course, they had a couple of children as well. Gene Barry himself passed away at the age of 90 in 2009, December 2009, and he's buried in New York, Gene Barry. And I suppose we could do a lot more on Gene Barry. Batmasterson, if you want to catch it up, if I was just checking on YouTube, some of the episodes are still available on YouTube. And also Burke's Law, or he played a part of Amos Burke, the chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce is the hallmark of that. But there was some fine acting in those series as well, on those TV series. Now, if you have any suggestions for any further episodes of, I suppose, heroes and icons here on Lair Media, please send us an email, info@lairmedia, and we will do the rest for you. We'll be delighted for some feedback on the shows. As I said, we only can give a little thumbnail because we don't want to bore people to death. This is just to encourage people to look up certain history of the time, whether it's social or whether it's actual battles and wars and all of that, social history of the time. And these TV series like Batmasterson, like Burke's Law, and the wonderful Gene Barry added, I suppose, to the enjoyment of life growing up in the 50s and 60s. And I think they shouldn't be really forgotten, and they'd be well worth a visit because they're still entertaining. They're a small bit dated, I understand, but nevertheless, if you're into acting and if you're into stage acting, these people honed their craft before they ever got their break, as I say, on television, the small screen. But for this edition of Heroes and Icons, from myself, Pat Barry, till we meet again, and goodbye from myself, and indeed goodbye from Gene Barry, and from a wonderful career he had in acting. So until we meet again, take care and good luck.